exercises in buck passing and things like this. So that I think is now what's going on with Iran. I mean, if you want to just put a headline over the Iranian situation, you could say that if you had regime change in Iran, one of the first things that a new puppet state in Iran, controlled by the U.S. and the British, would do is to cut off the oil to China. And similarly, if you have a revolution in Saudi Arabia, they might have a revolution in Saudi Arabia. The goal of that would be to cut off the oil to China, because that is the geopolitical sense of this entire thing.
Yeah, stay there. Again, they use revolution, whether it's anti-religious or pro-religious, it doesn't matter. They'll do it to break down and control any group they can. I want to look at the different characters involved in what's happening in Iran and where you see that going. We are back live with Webster Tarpley with us well into the final hour. We'll have open phones coming up in the next hour. Webster, you get on the air and you're calmly talking about all of this, and I think that's important to break it down. I want people to understand you've done deep research on all these subjects. I've done quite a bit of research as well to be able to even grasp the basics of what's going on. But I just want listeners to understand, this is, again, a key crossroads. Very serious things are happening right now. Very serious things are being decided right now. And so I don't want to just talk about what their goals are in Iran or Pakistan or going west in Georgia or going east again in North Korea. I want to talk about where you see it going. I mean, is it going well for them? Just as a layman studying this, it looks like things aren't going well in Iran, that the goal was to demonize Iran for military strikes, perhaps in the future, to kind of sell the outside world on that as one option. Another option is to try to put in the former prime minister who was hooked into the CIA and different black ops, who's actually a hard-liner and goes with the corrupt intermullahs versus Ahmadinejad. And that they do want to install him, and he has been anti-Russia in the past, to kind of strike a deal with the mullahs, but certainly that deal has been rebuffed. It's not being accepted. I mean, this is very, very murky. We know the CIA and MI6 are on record in there fomenting this and coming up with the classic color revolution and admittedly doing it, but what are the goals? Are they going well? Who are the factions? Because people want to hear that from you.
Well, remember, the Brzezinski tradition, and this is just normal imperialism, right? The neocons make you forget what a normal imperialist looks like. The Brzezinski tradition is you don't attack anybody. You sit back and play other countries one against the other. They have a name for this. It's called buck passing. In other words, if you want to do something bad to China, don't do it yourself because there might be blowback. You get somebody else to do it. So if you can get Iran to cut off the oil to China, or if you can get Iran into some hostile relation with Russia, then that's what you want to do. And I think
destabilization, balkanization, wind-up toys. The word you use is good, kamikazes. This is the great game, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you say, it's a color revolution. It's a people power coup. It's a velvet revolution. And there was some guy from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the Pastoran, who had an article about in a week before the election saying that what's going to happen is an attempt at a velvet revolution, people power coup by the CIA, and we won't let it happen. Now, I think they're not doing well with this. I think there was a hysterical group, and it's called the soft power group in the U.S. Foreign policy community. The soft power group says, we don't want the neocons and their stupid military methods. We want to use trickery, guile, subversion, soft power. We can do more with less. We can do more imperialist dirty work with less losses and certainly less expense and less fewer political problems. And that would be this group around Joseph Nye, who was one of the Nye is kind of an interface between the trilaterals and the Bilderbergers. Big supporter for Obama. He was blogging for Obama on the Huffington Post. So the soft power group. And now let's look at what they've got. If you want to have a color revolution, you've got to have a telegenic demagogue who gets out there and leads. And this they don't really seem to have. I mean, somebody like Obama himself or you can see that the telegenic is a flexible term when you get somebody like Yushchenko in Ukraine, right? He's not exactly telegenic. Maybe Saakashvili in Georgia maybe looked more telegenic at the beginning. Anyway, they have a problem in the sense that they don't have a leader who's willing to get out there and bet the ranch. The other thing you need, of course, is a color. In Iran, they have it. It's green. They have a slogan. The slogan is something like, "Yes, we can," as I understand it. You've got to have control of the TV and the media. Now, inside Iran, they don't have it. The state television, of course, is pro-Ahmadinejad. Satellite TV, though, is going to be anti-regime. It's interesting. The British just began a special television channel for Iran a couple of months before this started. The BBC Persian television, not radio anymore, but now television. This is something, I think, big. The really basic thing you need is a rent-a-mob, a dupe-a-mob, and swarming adolescents. The kind of thing you saw camped out in Kiev, right, in late 2004. So that they had up to a point largely through the intervention of this CIA covert action program with the $400 million for communications, for Twitter, for cell phones, and all the rest of this stuff. So that they had up to a point.
Stay there. Quick break, long segment coming up. Let's continue to break this down. On the other side with Webster Tarpley. We've got both his books on Obama, by the way, available at Infowars.com. Now, going back to Webster Tarpley. Webster, okay, you got the floor. I'm going to sit back here, continue with the different players in Iran, where you see this going, how that's going, and then let's move to other battlefronts, like what you see really going on in Pakistan versus what's happening in North Korea, because it's as if someone flipped a light switch in global crises in a fiery crescent from Eastern Europe into the Korean Peninsula, just suddenly lit up in flames, as well as Africa.
Yes, well, just on Iran now, if you come out and say that the revolution in Iran is being run through Twitter, that already implies a very specific class composition of who is out there revolting. A lot of people in Iran don't even have a phone. A lot of people in Iran have never made a phone call. The people who have access to the Internet are maybe 20-25%. That would be my guess. So if you say that the golden youth, the privileged, youthful students of Tehran University are demanding the overthrow of the regime, this is a social stratum that is essentially demanding more privileges for itself. These are people who believe in economic globalization. They're big on free market. For example, this guy Mousavi is demanding privatization of the state sector. Typical IMF, International Monetary Fund, shock therapy demand. He's demanding freedom on the Internet. Well, to the average peasant or poor worker, there's no such thing as freedom on the Internet because they don't have the Internet. And I think this points to the limitation of what they're doing in Iran. It reminds me a little bit of the Cedars Revolution that they tried in Lebanon a little while ago, where you had the rich Christian Maronite jet set driving up in Porsches and BMWs, if not Rolls Royces and Lamborghinis, and saying, "Oh, we're really hurting. We've got to get Hezbollah out of Lebanon." It's this kind of a situation. The support for Mousavi is largely in North Tehran, which is like saying, Park Avenue or Beverly Hills or the Gold Coast of Chicago. In other words, a very rich neighborhood. So it's rich elitists who like Mousavi, and you can get enough of them to go out on the street and drag some others with them, and the desperate housewives, because the desperate housewives are fascinated by the wife of Mousavi, who's a lady with some kind of academic background. She's an academic dean. And now, this is the problem, the very narrow base of support for the U.S.-British candidate Mousavi. Normally, you have to have a public opinion poll. The classic way you do a color revolution is an oppressive regime has an election, and then you get your swarming adolescents, you get your rent-a-mob and dupe-a-mob of young people and rich elitists out in the streets, camping in the main square of Kiev, things like this, and they demand the overturning of the election, as they're doing now, based on the idea that vote fraud took place. Well, how can you prove vote fraud? In this case, there's absolutely no proof. There's no suggestion of how you can prove vote fraud.